Welcome back. It is Kate with Adventure Bound Fitness and Nutrition, your dietitian, welcoming you to day 4 of your 7-day gut health challenge. How are you feeling? Usually this is where people start to feel a little cranky, but hopefully you're keeping up on your water, you're planning your meals and your snacks, so you are set, right? I hope so. Today we are going to talk about much maligned carbs and gluten. And this one gets a little bit more deep into the science because I believe this is really at the crux of so many issues. With all of the gut health things that could go on, this is such an important one. So we are going to dive a little deeper in today's video. So I hope you enjoy. And let me go ahead and do my switch over here. Okay, moving in. So let's talk carbs. This is actually a really powerful place to demonstrate again how quality plays a role and specific types of food matter more than just calories or macronutrients. So, quote, carbohydrates, they're found in many foods, everything from the highly unhealthy sugars, high fructose corn syrup, and white flours in baked goods, all the way to the nutrient-rich whole grains, starchy vegetables like potatoes and fruits. And so there's this huge spectrum of foods. So again, just to drive this home, quality matters. Now, your food list contains only carbs that are gluten-free. Why is that? Is gluten the devil? Is it evil? Is it bad? Yes and no. If you live a very healthy life, devoid of a whole lot of stress or inflammation, and you keep your gluten-containing foods to higher quality sources, such as whole grain breads versus fluffy cakes, or you keep those treats as treats and not your daily staple, then you're probably going to be fine. But gluten does cause persistent and slight damage to your GI lining. And for many people, it is an inflammatory food contributing to bloat, brain fog, fatigue, joint pain. So let's try to understand a little bit more about what that means. Gluten is a group of proteins found in certain grains, most well known being wheat. So it is also found in other cereal grains, and you can see in your food list which ones have been removed and which are still allowed. All of the gluten-containing ones are out for these 7 days. But gluten is what gives dough its elasticity. It helps bread rise, keep its shape, and it often leaves that nice, chewy, dense texture to food that people like. But why do we avoid it for now? Here's the breakdown. When you eat something with gluten, such as a slice of bread, or sometimes even a slice of like luncheon deli meat that has gluten added as a texturing agent, it can trigger the release of zonulin. Zonulin is a chemical that signals the tight junctions of your intestinal wall to open up. I'll have a picture in a minute of what that means. So basically, it makes your gut wall hyperpermeable. Hyperpermeability is the word used. And this leads to a host of potential health issues. So we are removing gluten for now because it causes the chemical zonulin to come and damage your gut lining, which is a problem. And here's where we're going to go a little deeper, because normally this level of depth is for the Gut Check Foundation's master course, but it is so important to gut health, possibly one of the most pervasive problems that conventional medicine seems to have wanted to ignore for a long time. So let's dive deeper here. Essentially up here, where we see leaky gut, up here, let's say this is your stomach, right? So you've got your stomach, and then there is the intestinal wall, the intestinal mucosal cells, all these nice, tight little cells here. And they should be like this normal, tight junction. They're side to side. The only thing that should get through are really, really tiny things, food broken all the way down where it should be. And then it would come through here into your bloodstream. So it's your gut, the cell wall, the intestinal lining into the blood. And this is where your immune system essentially is kind of a combination of all this. But here's where your white blood cells are. And when your white blood cells get triggered, that's when we have inflammation. It releases those things. And we should have some inflammation in the body when, if you think of like getting the common cold or getting the flu, you get maybe the fever, you get the watery eyes, you get the cough, you get different symptoms, body aches, nausea, whatever. That's your immune system fighting off that invader. But what happens is when these tight junctions get damaged by things like zonulin or everything over there on the here on the right, they start to spread apart. We break down the integrity of the lining, and things that shouldn't get through do. So whether that's food that's not fully broken down, whether that's bacteria or infections coming through, different things are now getting into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And the white blood cells are overreacting and causing excess inflammation. And this can lead to autoimmune, this can lead to IBS, this can lead to arthritis. This perpetuates those fires in the body. And as you can see, there's a lot of factors here that add to leaky gut. So not only gluten, but stress and anxiety, lack of sleep, certain nutrients, the inflammation from those foods, that just perpetuates that. So inflammation causes leaky gut causes inflammation. Certain medications, toxic burden, heavy metals, environmental pollutants, infections, H. pylori, certain parasites and pathogens, bacterial dysbiosis, and then exercise and running also add to it. Now, again, sort of the idea where in a perfect world, if we can manage our stress, we have mostly clean food, the body does heal. The body wants to heal, and we can manage this. We can run and have this. We can have some high quality gluten products now and then, and it wouldn't be a big deal because the body's healthy enough that a little zonulin doesn't make a difference, or if gluten is just consumed in moderation. But our current culture and lifestyle makes that difficult, right? But it does add up. So gluten is a huge thing we can pull out and remove and test for a few days and see how we do. Runners are especially susceptible. We have seen research that shows that not only is the physical stress inflammatory, and that's fine. That's one of those normal types of inflammation from workouts. It's part of the muscle fatigue. That's part of the muscle growth. That's part of muscle repair. But running for even 20 minutes does increase that zonulin production again, which adds back into that leaky gut cycle. This is not to say we should not run, but we need to maintain extra focus on gut health from nutrition and lifestyle. And for some reason, and you don't understand this, but so many GI doctors and medical doctors are absolutely loath to acknowledge this concept of leaky gut. And it is mind-boggling to me. I have had GI doctors tear me down, scold me for perpetuating what they considered a myth. But just to give you a sampling of the research out there, this is all on PubMed, which is supported by the National Institute of Health, and things that are considered gold standard in the medical world for evidence-based work and science-backed care. So this is just a screenshot of the top of a search of PubMed. And you can see here 744 results for leaky gut as of the date I recorded this. And that's the newer, more colloquial term. And you can see that this is showing the number of results per year. So it's only recently been really kind of exploding in the research, thank goodness. But leaky gut is a little bit more of kind of a colloquial term. The original, more clinical term is intestinal permeability. And you can see there are a lot of research studies here. There are over 19,000 studies that look at leaky gut. And we're looking at leaky gut, leaky brain, zonulin, gut permeability, type 1 diabetes, all this stuff. It is so related, autoimmune. So lots and lots of things going on. And yes, I know there's probably some, if I read through all 19,000, that some of the titles like don't actually relate to what we're looking for. And it might not be an exact fit, but the idea is this research is here. It's not new, it's growing, but it's going on. It's been growing exponentially since about 2010, and it's hitting its peak here in 2020 as people realize the importance of this finally. But other research shows that it takes conventional medicine practitioners an average of 17 years 17 years before they will start to change their care method. So while the data is here and it is in abundance, and some doctors are getting on board finally, since it's been about 10, 12 years, it's still going to probably be another 5 or more before these doctors get more on board with it. But this is where I've been practicing for over 10 years now. So basically the idea, small intestines is where this leaky gut occurs, and this is what creates food-induced inflammation and other factors. So when there is damage to the GI lining, food that normally shouldn't get through to your bloodstream where your white blood cells are, now does. The immune system does not recognize these not fully broken down molecules, perceives it as an invader. Your immune system then goes into action, releasing inflammatory agents, because that is what your immune system does. If something shouldn't be there, it attacks. And depending how these inflammatory markers are made and they circulate through your body, they can create all these symptoms beyond just GI distress. The increase in inflammatory agents now creates a vicious cycle and perpetuates back to that GI lining damage. That everything on that symptom score, those can all be related to food-specific inflammation. And usually when people go, if we need to go through like a full on protocol, we can get your score cut in half, if not more. Average I see is 60% reduction in as little as 3 months. And then if you continue on, you can continue improving that score. So there are, if you've kind of picked up on this pattern, there's a lot of two-way streets in the body where one thing affects another and it in turn makes things worse, these kind of vicious cycles. And leaky gut absolutely makes certain things worse. And those worsened internal aspects then magnify the perforation and add back to that damage to the GI integrity. And this is part of why this program was originally called Gutsy Beginnings, because it all starts here. That gut is linked to inflammation, health, energy, autoimmune, brain fog, nervous system, weight issues, performance, athletic performance, depression, mood, and more. It begins with the gut, and you need to make sure you are optimizing it. There is a lot we can do. And that first change comes from food. That is the first best step to take, and why I'm so glad you are here. So cycling back to carbs, now that I've gone on my side note here of gluten and leaky gut and why this is so important, starches and grains, non-gluten containing ones. Now, these are all going to be carbohydrate containing foods. And again, go gluten-free. Avoid those gluten-containing foods such as breads, pastas, and crackers. You want to instead do the gluten-free things like certified gluten-free oats. Oats are naturally gluten-free, but there's often cross-contamination because they're processed in the same facility. So I encourage you to find the ones that actually say certified gluten-free oats. Buckwheat, despite the name, is actually gluten-free. Quinoa and brown rice are very popular options. You can do millet. If you find you cannot bring gluten back in, if you feel a lot better without it and trying to bring it back in, even a healthy small sample really kind of flares you, test for celiac. Most people should be able to eat gluten in small amounts if they want to. There's nothing you need from wheat products that you can't get from other grains and other foods. But just if you find you cannot, it is good to get that celiac tested just to rule it out. And you want to do it sooner rather than later, because they can only test it if you've been consuming gluten within like the past 2 to 3 months. So you don't want to remove gluten for 3+ months and then go get tested. They won't get an accurate result. But yeah, if you can bring it back in and you're like, okay, I feel okay, but I'm going to keep it out for health reasons, perfect. But if you bring it back in and it flares up pain or GI issues or something, try to get that test ruled out. It can be done pretty quickly, pretty easily with your doctor. So other starches and grains that we're aiming for here, any starches are going to be like your vegetables, your starchy veggies, potatoes, yams, squash, pumpkin, corn, if you want. And we're aiming for about that palm size. Now, fruits are another form of carb. So on that plate, on that PDF, they're also part of the carb sources, but they're more in the form of sugars instead of starch. But they still provide energy. They can have some wonderful health properties, vitamin C, nutrient, good for eyes, good for immune system. But they do have a little bit of an effect on blood sugar. So you don't want to go overboard. Usually I say 1 to 3 servings per day is appropriate, depending what you're eating. And if you're trying to stay very low carb or ketogenic, then you probably are going to cut back even more. But if you're just doing a general low carb, like a paleo, typically 1 cupped handful of carbohydrate to your meal is usually appropriate, whether that's like half a potato or a handful of berries or a small apple, either way. And you're welcome to do more if you are an endurance athlete. Some endurance sports encourage as much as 65 to 85% of your total calories from carbs. But if you're not specifically eating carbs for training and performance purposes, I do encourage most people to try to cut back. Most people don't need as many carbs as they're consuming, and it is adding to blood sugar issues and insulin resistance and other problems, perpetuates hunger cravings like crash and burn cycles, sleep issues. So we want a nice steady influx of carbs through the day, whether that's a higher amount for endurance or a lower amount for kind of other healthy reasons. Now, in the long run, the amount and portion size will vary based on you, your activity level, your goals. You know, an Ironman athlete is going to need a very different carb plan than, say, a full-time mom whose priorities are more about the kids and reducing stress and just trying to get to the gym for 30 minutes at a time. So again, we can't get into those details. Just know that it can also be personalized. The idea is you want those best types of carbs, the high quality whole foods, and don't eat too many of them. We'll talk more about vegetables and fiber on day 6, but in general with produce, fruits and veggies, there's nothing wrong with getting the pre-cut produce if you need it to save time. Yes, there's some benefits to cutting it fresh and eating it fresh versus the pre-cut already like cubes, butternut squash or zoodles. But if that's what you want to go for, that's fine. You can even utilize the frozen aisle for a longer shelf life. Like I love using Trader Joe's packaged veggies for quick and convenient pre-cut produce, or any stores like frozen fruits for my smoothies. It's great, but I do recommend avoiding canned foods, or at least really trying to limit. Those are usually more salted with poor quality salt. And there's questions as to whether or not some aluminum, or if they do like a liner in it, that there might be BPA and chemicals that might be leaching from the can into foods, especially with the acidic things like tomatoes and fruit. Now on fresh produce, notice the sticker. If it's not well labeled in your store, organic versus conventional. If you can afford organic, I strongly recommend that you do so. Look at the number. Usually that little code that like the cashier types in, or you have to type in at the self-checkout, if it starts with a 9 versus a 4. A lot of details that can go into this, but essentially to help ease the burden on your body from chemical stress or pesticide stress, you want to try to go for organic where you can. Keep an eye on the environmental working groups, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list. They update it every year typically, and they look at the foods that are most important to get from organic if you can't afford all of it, and those that are less of concern. Typically is a very big generalization. If it's something you eat the skin of, it's usually better to go organic. So things like grapes, strawberries, celery was actually really high at 1.2, versus if you're going to peel it like an orange, a banana, an avocado, those are going to be less of a concern. That's a huge generalization. But pesticides, and if it becomes a big burden, it can mess with your energy, brain health, hormones, liver, detoxing, and more. So another aspect of carbs to personalize are the carbs you may consume during training. I know we talked about this a bit in hydration, but I'm just going to sort of reiterate here. So first of all, note that if you train for less than 90 minutes at a time, water and proper foods throughout the day should be sufficient. You probably don't need a sports drink. If you do train for more than 90 minutes, then it starts to get very nuanced as to how much to consume, what types, and when. For this program, we're just looking at food sources during the day. But I do want you to get into checking out your favorite labels, or checking out the labels of your favorite energy drinks or gels and the carb content. For athletes especially, this can be another area where performance supplements may be adding to GI distress and oral health issues, which can then play into heart disease and other problems. So your task today is to tap into this, which we will get to. Summary overall, wrapping this up, explore your sports drinks and gels because carb intake do range drastically, like everything else, depending on what's going on your needs, your goals, your current weight, etc. But do a gluten-free trial for a time. Challenge it back in after 15 to 30 days. Check celiac. Get it ruled out if you cannot reintroduce gluten without symptoms. Many factors, including zonulin from gluten or running, can tear up your gut lining, resulting in leaky gut or intestinal permeability, and a damaged GI lining opens the door for so many other health problems. So I want you to explore those sports drinks and gels. You don't, even if you don't tend to use them, I just want to encourage you, go take a look at some, or maybe your favorite drink in general. If there's a juice you liked or a pop you liked, or something else, take a look at what's going on. How much sugar is in a bottle of Gatorade, for example, or a block or a chew or a gel, or one of those honey wafers? And look at what type of sugar. Do you recognize some of the ways sugar gets labeled? Dextrose, cane sugar, glucose, HFCS. What else is in that ingredient? Added colors, added chemicals, quote, natural flavors. So I would love to know what your favorite performance product is and what is in it. And are you surprised by anything? Do you have a story of a product that you tried that backfired and made you feel nauseated or gave you GI issues? Any idea what it may have been now that you're being more mindful? Have you found one that you feel is a little more natural that you like, that you would recommend? So share with the group and use hashtag 7DC. Tomorrow, we're going to get into plant-based fats and nuts, seeds and oils, and we'll discuss a very powerful source of anti-inflammatory items. As always, all the links you need for today are in your email. And if you have any questions, please post them in the group. Stay strong, stay empowered, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.